Capital One has recently changed the way you are able to remove collections from your account. So, in today's conversation, I really want to share with you how you can remove Capital One collections from your credit report a lot faster. So, here's an overview I want you to pay attention to. It's really important to understand that when you want to remove Capital One collections from your credit report, you first need to know who currently owns the debt, right? It's all about debt ownership. In other words, has Capital One sold your unpaid credit card debt to another collection agency, or is the debt still with Capital One? You got to know the accountability here. And you can find out who owns your Capital One debt by actually requesting a copy of your credit report and checking the creditor that's listed on the entry. So you can go to annualcreditreport.com. So you can go to their website. So you can actually download copies of your credit reports from each of the three credit bureaus. So, TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. And so it's really great. And the cool thing is that you can actually request a copy per year. I mean, during COVID, it was possible to request actually a free copy once a week. But now that COVID is over, you can actually do it once a year or twice a year, but it's still worth it anyway. Okay. So the bottom line is, so the first thing is you want to really determine ownership of the debt account before doing anything. Okay. And the thing is, if your debt appears as a charge-off, Capital One has most likely sold your debt to a collection agency and written it off as a loss. Okay. That means what? It means you no longer owe money to Capital One. Instead, now you owe money to a third-party debt collector. And so it's one of those things where you have to make sure that you know exactly what's really happening with your debt. Okay. And so, what you want to do here is that if the debt was sold to a third-party debt collector, you want to follow the proper steps to remove a charge-off from your credit report. And if the entry listing is a collection, or let's say a collection or a delinquent, you are more than likely to have to pay Capital One as the debt collector. Okay, so one thing you want to do here is that I'll explain to you in today's conversation all you have to do to make sure you're having the debt collection removed from your credit report. Okay, the Capital One debt collection removed from your credit report so that you can actually increase your credit score ASAP. By the way, boss, welcome back to the show. It's really a pleasure to have you here. Make yourself comfortable. You are going to enjoy today's conversation. The first thing you want to do when it comes to removing Capital One collections from your credit report is to actually request a Goodwill adjustment. And now, a Goodwill adjustment really can go really far in terms of helping you improve your credit worthiness, helping you improve a good faith, just sort of show Capital One that you are showing good faith in terms of making the debt actually extinguish as soon as possible. So to get the collection removed from the credit report, you can contact Capital One and ask a representative to remove the collection out of Goodwill. Okay, it's all about just asking for a favor. That's what it is. Okay, you just call in, be as polite as possible, and explain what really happened. Try to be as honest and polite as possible, but you want to be straightforward. Okay, so you should write a letter stating why you were late in the first place on the account. And this could be a job loss or death in the family or stuff that happens. I mean, if you went through something excruciating that really prevented you from making the payment, you want to explain that. Again, you want to be as direct and honest as possible. And so you want to say that, and you want to ask if the debt collector would kindly remove the negative entry from your credit reports with all three credit bureaus. Okay, it's one of those things where you have to try. You have to try. We can't really guarantee it will work, but you can try. So request a Goodwill adjustment, and now this will work only if you have already paid the debt and no outstanding balance is owed. In other words, you've already taken the steps to make sure the debt is actually taken care of before you actually ask anything. So Goodwill adjustment is really important to actually request first, so that you can remove Capital One collections from your credit report. One thing I need to say here is that timing is also important when it comes to asking. Why? You want to make sure that your financial situation has improved way above where it was the last time you actually didn't pay the debt, right? So your financial situation, your cash inflows and cash outflows, your DTI, your CUR. So if you have a low CUR, this could help also. Your credit utilization ratio, this could help. This could help also. And you want to apply for a Goodwill adjustment in like via a letter, but also over the phone. Boss, I want to quickly remind you of today's topic. We are having a conversation about how to remove Capital One collections from your credit reports. The second thing you want to do here is that after requesting a Goodwill adjustment is to actually pay to delete the Capital One collections. So, and this works really fantastically. So what happens here is that if you can't request a Goodwill adjustment, let's say, because the account is not current or you still owe a balance, you can consider a pay for delete agreement instead. And what happens here is that with this kind of agreement, you pay a portion of the balance due in exchange for Capital One or the collection agency removing the negative entry from your credit report. And so this method works best if Capital One sold the collection account to a third-party collection agency. Now, that said, it's still worth trying this method if Capital One still owns your old credit card debts. Okay, so this is kind of cool. Now, what I want to say here is that based on our research, this strategy allows the credit card company or let's say third-party debt collector to collect at least a part of your balance. Let's say you owe $10,000 and you are offering to pay $3,000 so they can delete the Capital One collections. 30%. Now, I really doubt that they will accept 30%. They might accept 50% or 60%. So, given a choice between receiving half the balance and receiving nothing, most debt collectors will accept half. And they may even be willing to remove their negative entry from your credit reports in exchange for the money. Okay. Now you'll have to get your pay for delete agreement in writing from the debt collector before sending payment or starting a repayment plan. Otherwise, you may have a no proof the debt collector agreed to remove the negative items from your credit reports in exchange for partial payments. Okay. So bottom line here is what you want to make sure that you get everything in writing. And so make sure that the written agreement states that all negative items related to your Capital One accounts, such as late fees, late payments, and missed payments, are to be removed. Okay, you gotta really have that. And this is important. Now, you can actually do it yourself, or you can actually just refer everything to a credit repair agency, and they have experts to kind of help you out. So this will go a lot faster. Another way you can actually remove Capital One collections from your credit report is to dispute the collection. I mean, this is one of those things where if you really have the time and you have the ability to dispute the collection, you can actually just do it, okay? And so if you, let's say, okay, let me just break it down for you. When you have to dispute the collection, you have to be honest too, though. If you legitimately think you do not owe the collection, then you can dispute it. If you don't owe the debt to Capital One collections because it's reported inaccurately, you need to dispute this debt. Now, disputing works only if the entry has incorrect information listed on your credit report. And you'll also need a copy of your credit reports from all three credit bureaus. We're speaking about Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion to complete this step. So when we talk about disputing the collection as part of removing Capital One collections from your credit report, you can't just do it in TransUnion and forget about Experian and Equifax. No, you got to do it across the board. And so what you want to do here is that once you actually get a copy of your credit reports from all three bureaus, you want to review the Capital One collections entry on your credit report. And you also want to verify that all the information is accurate. So you want to check the account number. And see, the thing is, you want to check everything. You want to really drill down to everything. You want to check the account number. You want to check the balance due. You want to check the payment history. And if there is anything, if there's anything inaccurate in the entry, you can dispute it with all three credit bureaus. And the credit bureaus will investigate the dispute. They have their own processes, their own internal processes. And if they are unable to verify the correct information, they may remove it. Okay. And so now this method works because the Fair Credit Reporting Act requires credit bureaus and lenders, for that matter, to report only accurate information. about your credit accounts. So this is kind of important. So, and this is a law that's enforced by the consumer, the CFPB, so the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. So you are able to get protection for your credit file from credit reporting errors. But the bottom line here is that you want to make sure that you've done your work already and make sure that you are on the right side of the equation. Boss, I want to quickly remind you of today's topic. We are having a conversation about how to remove Capital One collections from your credit reports. Another strategy you can have here if you are trying to remove Capital One collections from your credit reports is basically have a professional remove it. That's what I said a little earlier. I mean, you could do it yourself, but if you really don't have time or the amount is huge, it's just a lot better to have someone that's somebody who knows exactly what he or she is doing, take care of it. So professional credit repair companies actually remove collections from credit reports, and this is kind of cool. So you are able to you're able to do things through them. Although you can try to remove it yourself, a credit repair company saves the time and effort it usually takes an individual to do this on his or her own. Okay, and the bottom line here is that it's all about making sure that you look at the amounts, you look at your situation. You got to look at a constellation of things before hiring a third-party collections agency to kind of help you out. And we look at three things when we actually advise our clients to go that route. Number one, you want to look at the amounts. That's like the amount of your Capital One collections. Number two, your current financial situation. And number three, you want to think about what you have tried in the past. In other words, have you tried to contact the Capital One, quote unquote, peacefully first? Have you done things diplomatically first? And if those things are a lot complicated or you don't have time, then you can go to a third party. But see, the thing is, the amount must be consequential, because if you owe only $1,000 and you are actually hiring a third party debt collector to kind of help you out, they're not doing it. It's not really worth it, because they're charging you too. I mean, you have to pay them. You have to pay a debt collection agency. So the amount we're talking about must be consequential to be economically viable, to make sense to you from an economic standpoint. Okay. And one thing I also want to say here is that when we talk about a credit repair company, we actually have reviewed this on other shows at length. So if you're interested, you can just let us know in the comment section. We'll just direct you to the right video. But yeah, you have videos that can really help you out in terms of removing the collections ASAP. Now, one thing I want to say here is that if you're trying to remove Capital One collections from your credit report, it's important also to know your debt collection rights, because I think, as I said a little earlier, we have the CFPB that's enforcing all kinds of laws, and it's one of those things where you have to know really what's happening. Now, collection agencies contact individuals quite often, which causes unnecessary stress, and so luckily you don't have to endure these disturbances, because there's a law called the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act that limits a debt collector's behavior as it seeks to collect a debt from you, all the while preparing you to negotiate with debt collectors. Okay, so this is kind of cool. Now there are a lot of the laws itself is pretty complicated, but one thing I want to say here is that you got to really sort of identify those scenarios and actions and circumstances that are quote unquote illegal vis-a-vis the law. Okay, so we're talking about like if you have a debt collector threatening to have you arrested, this is illegal. Call you early in the morning or late at night, this is illegal. Contact your friends, family members, or co-workers about your debts, this is illegal. And if a debt collector actually uses contact information you asked the debt collector to stop using, and if the debt collector is threatening to increase the interest rates on your other loans or major credit cards. So it's one of those things, once again, so there are certain things they can do, but there are other things they can't do because the law is on your side here. And so you can let, if there's anything happening that is illegal, you want to contact the CFPB. So, especially if a debt collector has grossly violated your consumer rights. And you can also complain to the Better Business Bureau at BBB.org. Bottom line here is that if you want to remove Capital One collections from your credit report, all the four things that I just said a little earlier, you can do them. You can request a Goodwill adjustment. You can pay to delete the Capital One collections. You can dispute the collection. You can have a professional remove it. But it always helps all along to know your debt collection rights, so that no debt collector is actually a sort of inflicting unnecessary stress upon you or your family's life. So you have to be aware of those pro tips here. And the bottom line here is that as you're trying to remove Capital One collections from your credit report, the big question is, can Capital One collections actually sue you? I mean, can they actually sue you based on your financial history with them? Now, while collection agencies can have you arrested, Capital One collections or any debt collector can sue you in civil court. If you lost or settled the lawsuit, a judge will likely order you to repay the debt. At that point, Capital One could seek a wage garnishment, which means the company could claim part of your paycheck before you get paid. Okay, and most of the time, consumer debt does not reach this point because the company's legal fees could exceed your debt amount. And additionally, you have protection from legal action due to your state's statute of limitations on consumer debt. And once the statute expires, you are no longer legally responsible for repayment. In this case, you still owe the money and it can remain in your credit history, but companies cannot successfully sue you for the debt collection. And so it really depends on the state where you are in. And statutes of limitations vary by states throughout this country. And so let me give you a couple of examples here. In New York State, the statute for consumer debt expires after 6 years. 6 years. In California, the statute is 4 years. Rhode Island, the statute is 10 years. And Virginia, the statute is 3 years. So you can see that it really varies. Now, you can inadvertently restart your statute from the beginning by discussing your debt on the phone or in writing. And if a debt collector calls you, you shouldn't accept responsibility for the debt unless you are certain you are paying it off. Okay, so it's one of those things you have to be aware of. Now, why should you remove Capital One credit card debt in the first place? Well, because of the fact that this is a scenario that has a detrimental impact on your credit score. So credit card debt lowers your credit score in the following ways. You have credit utilization and you have payment history. So credit utilization, a credit card balance approaching or exceeding your credit limits will inflate your credit utilization ratio, which actually comprises, when you think about it, 30 to 35% of your FICO score. Actually, it's 30%. 30%. CUR is 30%. Payment history is 35%. Okay, so and payment history is the second part. So normally you don't have a credit card land in collections without missing some payments along the way, right? So this missed or late payments erode your credit score because payment history comprises, I think I just said it, 35% of your FICO score. So one thing I want to say here is that, getting all negative information associated with Capital One scrubbed from your credit history could actually help you unlock a stronger credit score, which you should aim for anyway, right? And so with better credit, as a borrower, you can access the best loans and credit cards with low interest rates and low fees, and you are able to get better terms too. So this is kind of cool. And bottom line, it also is that you can also contact Capital One. We will put this on the screen. You can contact Capital One using the following details. So Capital One, 1680 Capital One Drive, McLean, Virginia 22102. Phone number is 1-800-955-7070. Thank you so much for your attention. I really appreciate it. Let's do a quick recap here. So in today's conversation, I spoke to you about how to remove Capital One collections from your credit report. So I'll give you the overview, I'll give you the steps, and now the pro tips. Thank you so much. God bless you. I'll see you next time. Until then, remember, stay marvelous.